Good evening, welcome everybody. Settle in. Hope it didn't get too wet or too hot or too muggy where you were today, but I'll let you all come in and a very big welcome. I'll explain the difference in background from my usual setting once you're all settled in. I'm going to start with a glass of white wine because it's that time of day. And don't worry, I will explain the opening and the procedure of this in due course, but I'll just get myself started here. Like this. Boom. Welcome everybody who's just joining. We're just getting a glass of wine to finish the day and start the evening. Welcome everybody. So we have this evening is drink first class, and this was a sellout event. Now, there may well be folks that want to watch this back on repeat and you have the wines at home, but for those who have joined us this evening, a huge and warm welcome. Not too warm, fortunately, because it rained a little bit, but it was stinking hot. But it's great to have you all here this evening. So I'm going to, first of all, have a drink, and then you have a drink. Yeah, so this evening is about drinking first class. What we've done in the past, as you will have seen, is introduced you to some new winemakers, had a focus on existing winemakers like Christian Patat in the past, where you've been able to taste through all of their wines. This evening is focused on mostly all our wines that I think you may have gone under the radar. They're excellent quality wines, and it's just an opportunity for you to taste just a level above. And then if you want to explore further, you can, go out and get it if you like. But really, it's just sometimes it's nice to have 6 different wines that you possibly would never have put together in one evening. And that is really the excitement that I've been so lucky with my whole wine career, is to sit down sometimes and people just pour you all these various different wines, and it's something that you could never conceived yourself. So that's what we have this evening. And for anyone who's joining us for the first time with these tasting packs, you will have seen the details on the website, but I'm just going to explain it very briefly so you all know where you are. You will have seen you got wines 1, 2, and 3, which are chilled or should be chilled, 2 whites and a rosé, and then you have the 4 reds. And on the corner of the wine there, you have a little perforation, and if you click it like that, click, it clicks. How beautiful that sound is. And it pops up, and then in a safe place over a table, don't get your carpet wet, you just give a little click like that, and you clip off the top of the wine, okay? The sachet, I beg your pardon. And then you can pour it like that. But just take great care of where you're pouring, because some clips, they're never the same. I've learned in time. So that's what we have to begin. So I'll put that to the side, and you have the chat room in the corner here, which already, well, please just tell us where you are, what you're doing, what you're drinking, hopefully these wines. But also you've got the Q&A. So the Q&A section down there, that is for any questions you want to ask me specific to the wine. But the chat is basically for all of you just to say, hey, hi, how are you? And it's, for me, honestly, for the past 2.5 years, avoiding avoiding the topic of COVID, but really it has been fantastic just following the chat. I can't follow it actually because it's going so fast, but you guys seem to follow it, and that's what makes me happy that we create this community here this evening. I'll keep an eye on the Q&A only for questions, but you guys just go for it on the Q&A and let yourself be known and heard. So we are going to kick off with wine number 1. And wine number 1 is Treixadura, the name of the grape, from Ribera in Spain. Now, the producer here, this is from an estate called Ramon de Sazar. And I just want to give you a bit of context of where it came from. Actually, it's relative to what I just said in terms of lockdown and so forth. But I'll go back to, it was exactly March 2020. And now most of you David Toftrup from Spain, the Dane from Spain, and you will have seen that we've introduced, or he has introduced, his brother Jonas Toftrup. And Jonas Toftrup is a friend of mine from studies and various things before, but he rang me middle or late March, and he said, right? I've got a great friend up in Ribeiro, or I'm going to show you a map of Ribeiro is, but it's northwest Spain. And he said, all the restaurants have closed down. This guy makes incredible wines. Is there any chance you could take a look at some of his wines to maybe you would import it? And I was like, okay, yeah, maybe. And it's all very busy. And then, as some of you will know, we started this $5 million COVID rescue fund to help the winemakers who would typically sell into high-end 5-star Michelin star restaurants, and we're now sitting on a lot of stock and they couldn't move it anywhere. So we raised this fund to bring in these wines. Eventually, the guys, Javier at Ramon de Cesar, sent me the samples, and Eamon, and we tasted them, and every single one of the wines was fantastic. And we bought as much as we could, and you bought it. We put it in the Spanish rescue case. So that is how we first came across Javier at Ramon de Cesar. And we haven't looked back. In fact, we funded extra wines. We've put it in the Fine Wine Club. And this wine that you're drinking is a gold medal winning wine. It won a gold at Decanter World Wine Awards this year, which is really, trust me, we do our best in these awards. It's not easy to get a gold medal. A gold medal is high level recognition, and this is a gold medal. So I just going to show you on a map quickly where we are, because sometimes I contextualize it. And let me just say now, this will not be death by PowerPoint. I just want you to get a snapshot, and then we'll take away the view of the map, and we just get back to chatting again. Okay, so just briefly, I'm going to share my screen. My favorite part of the past 2.5 years, trying to share a screen. And here we go. Okay, and if I do that like slideshow, you can see this. Push. Okay, so top left corner, you can see that you're really just, you're touching the border of Portugal there. And the key thing to realize here, but the appellation, the region we are in is Ribeiro. You see where I'm circling there, Ribeiro. And that you're on a river here, and it goes down and into northern Portugal. The key thing to acknowledge here is that when you think of Spain, certainly in the past few weeks, you think of the heat and the dryness and the barrenness and so on, and all of that is true. But in northwest Spain, it is verdant. It's verdant or verdant. You know what I mean? It's green and it's lush and it rains a lot. You have the Atlantic coast here, and this is a place of just, it's bountiful in its growth and so forth. And so if I move on to the next, you get a picture. Here it's pine trees. I flew into, can't remember the airport. It'll come to me, but you can smell the pine as you're driving. You put the window down, you can smell the pine trees. So you can, the whole area is like this, but you have these beautiful set up structure. This is the winery just here, and it's all sort of integrated into the landscape, as you can see. And then this Javier and picking his grapes, which is just a jolly nice photo, but I'll leave it at that here, stop it and come back. So the main thing to realize is you've got outstanding quality white wines from Spain. We know Rioja, Ribera del Duero, perhaps Priorat over outside of Barcelona, and we know them for the reds. You think of the heat, you think of the richness. But don't forget Albarino, which I think lots of you will know. And here, Albarino would be Rías Baixas, a little even further more. It is right up on the coast. Here you're in Ribeiro, and it's a place that concentrates. The flavors are so concentrated. It's like a pear and guava all condensed, and it's just this whole glossiness. And it's not an expensive wine, but in my opinion, honestly, I think it's a touch on the taste of luxury. It's affordable luxury where every mouthful you have, let's have a taste, it's towards decadence. And I think it's incredible. We're so fortunate to have met Javier, and all his wines win awards, but this is a gold medal. Yeah, it's what I love is the glossiness. It's almost a white wine for red wine drinkers because it gives so much. It has texture and roundness. Now, what I'm going to quickly do is jump in and have a quick look at the Q&A to see if there's something I can explain. Stuart says, I love the map. Thank you, Stuart. I didn't draw it myself. It's great to help with the understanding. Is there a lot of difference between Ribeiro and Ribera? Yeah, good question. First of all, Ribera, it is, as you say, Ribera, it's Ribera del Duero, and in Spain. Ribera del Duero is the full name. And del Duero, D-U-E-R-O, is the Spanish name for the Douro, or basically the Douro River, where Oscar Quevedo and Mario Negreiros are. They're in the Douro, and we all know the world famous Douro River, but the Douro River, D-O-U-R-O, flows into Spain and becomes, and basically in Spain, the region of Ribera del Duero, it's a continuation of it. So that's the difference. That one goes below, and Ribeiro is up here, and it's more the name of the region as a whole up there. So good question. And I'll take one more question. Oak or no oak? This is no oak. This is concrete tank. And Javier has a wine that goes up. He has two more around this, and then there is a top wine called Nobre, N-O-B-R-E. It also wins gold medal, and that has some large oak. So the purpose here is to express the varietal, the grape, and not so much dominated in terms of winemaking style. It's more of a reflection of where it comes from. The other thing to bear in mind is how rare we see the name Treixadura. And Treixadura originates from this part of Spain and grows in Portugal as well. So in Vinho Verde, over the border. You have other grapes, Godelo, Albarino, as I mentioned, and these are grapes that come from this part of Spain. And I think just any benefit or any takeaway from this evening and this tasting pack that you've bought is just to open your mind to this fantastic part of Spain that produces outstanding white wines. And we know the great white wines of the world, but really, I think this is approaching on them with this quality here. So I think on this one, novice taster here, tips for tasting, please. Okay, fair enough. Mandy, that's a good call. I have a question here from Mandy saying, a novice taster here, tips for tasting, please. So why don't I just do that quickly to remind everybody how to taste. So what we're doing, and for white and red, it's generally the same, but you might pay a bit more attention in different areas. So I'm pouring some more of the Treixadura. The first thing you do is you look at the glass, and here you can see my glass, and it's just a quick look. And basically, it's like taking something out of the fridge. The next two steps are like taking something out of the fridge. First of all, does it look green and manky? If so, chuck it in the bin. Here, in this case, it's a white wine, but it's clean and clear, and there's no, you're expecting to see a fresh white wine. Do you see it? Yes. Do you see any sort of browning or anything that might say, that doesn't really look like I was expecting it to look like? And you don't need to be an expert to know what it should look like. It should look like white wine that you've had in a restaurant or a bar or at home. And if it looks any different, go, okay, there might be something up. And then you go to the next stage, which is to smell it. And then you're going to detect further if there is an issue. So you smell it, and the purpose of smelling it is a bit like the chicken you take out of the fridge or whatever veg, is, does it smell off? Should I put this in my mouth? Should I put this in my body? And it's basically about, Darwinism. How did we all survive? The people who put the dodgy meat in their mouth didn't make it very far. So it's just smell it. Does it smell off? And the off would be, corked. But if you don't know what that is, it's just like funky, wet, like wet dog hair, wet cardboard. If it doesn't smell appealing, then you probably don't want to put it in your mouth. Okay. But in this case, I smell ripe pears, guava, Gaia melon, these kind of things, that indicators that just help me to go, okay, that's one of those kind of ripe wines. Where on the other side, I might be smelling, if it was a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, you might be smelling gooseberry, passion fruit, pineapple, citrus, and it doesn't really matter, but it's sort of like, okay, what's coming up? And that's why you're doing it. You go, okay, I got an idea of what's coming next. And then you put it in your mouth, and then I'll explain this, and then we'll move on to the next wine. That is bloody delicious. Here you're looking at, well, how do you taste? The quick answer is everything in its right place? Is there anything that's jarring and sticking out that's a challenge? And in this instance, no. You've got lush, juicy, vibrant mouthfeel. Nice, crisp acidity, which you feel here on the side of your tongue. Acidity is there just to give a bit of vibrancy, and it's like a vinaigrette, it just sort of brings it all up. And yeah, all rounded. And then when we're tasting a red wine, you might feel some tannin up here in your gums. But what that is just structure of a red wine. So that's it. You're tasting and you go, yeah, tastes like it smelt on the nose. Actually, do I like it? That's the key bit. I'd say that's a very good quality white wine. Now, all of us like different things. One sugar in your tea, milk in your coffee, all these kind of things. We're all different. But whether you like it or not is up to you. But I truly believe that's a delicious white wine. So that's how you taste, basically. It's not complicated, and it should just basically be fun. Okay, we're going to move to the second wine. And to do so, I would like to introduce my dear friend, colleague, and someone who I respect immensely. The winemaker of this, which is one of my favorite wines, Naked Wines, is Richard Kershaw, all the way from South Africa. Hello, Richard. How are you? Richard, you're currently muted, so you're going to have to say all of that again.
Okay. No, it's great to be here. There we go. Yeah, it's good to be here, and it's great to be part of this lineup and tasting. And yeah, it's been a long time. Hopefully, I'll get over to the UK soon. But yeah, so cool.
Nice one. Well, very big welcome. And Laurita, our incredible tour manager and events manager here, has arranged for these tasting packs to be shipped all the way down to South Africa. So you've got exactly what we have in front of us, and you're tasting along. So you're good.
I do. I have them all.
Good man. So on to your wine, Chardonnay. How has it traveled? How does it look from your side of the world?
I have to be honest. It's on my side personally. It's not as fresh as the bottle, which I've actually got as well. So maybe it hasn't quite decanted as well. On my side, I don't know if anybody angels are finding that, but I've just got a little bit. I liked a little bit of freshness. That's my only consideration. I had the bottle earlier, and it was a little bit fresher. So maybe just maybe it hasn't traveled so brilliantly. But anyway.
Well, I tell you what I can say, because I'm well versed in your wine, and I think the pack looks excellent. So I wonder if it might have been the shipment, the travel down. It's gone. Probably took about 7 days, and a various heat crossing over the equator. But personally, I think the wine looks fantastic, because I drink your wine a lot.
Yeah. Okay. No, I'm glad. So I'm just a bit critical, and I love being critical of my own wine. So.
Good on you. I think we're in a good place. So I guess, Richard, just for everyone that's tasting at home, this is the title of this evening's session is your Drink First Class. This is, in my opinion, a Chardonnay, a pep above. And I wonder if you could just, first of all, two things. If you could give us an idea of what is the current wine scene in South Africa, because in the past, 5 to 10 years, I think it's transitioned quite a bit. It's quite a very, it's an exciting, vibrant place with huge potential, and actually quite a bit of challenge, is that the right word, to the old guard. The wines that are being produced there, tasted blind against whether it's Burgundy or Great Californian Chardonnays, really knock it out of the park. I mean, it's a force to be reckoned with. So one thing is basically if you could explain what's happening and how's it been happening, and then basically if you have a view of your wine versus just a compare and contrast to, let's say, Burgundy and Napa. Shall we do that?
Yeah, I think the change that's happened in South Africa is that it's a market that generally looks inwards on itself, or has done for a number of years, or had done, I should say, for a number of years, and it had produced Chardonnays originally that were had no real expense put onto them back in when the embargoes were lifted in the early 90s. And actually some of the Chardonnays actually were not bad. They tended to follow a slightly Burgundian style, so they would all go through a malolactic conversion. And that basically effectively means your malic acid is converted to lactic. So malic, that lovely green acid, is softened to lactic, and that creaminess tends to work quite well with the wines. But because they lacked enough acidity in the first place, they tended to feel a little bit richer and broader, and lacked a little bit of to me, quite a lot of freshness. And then as South Africa became a little more well-known, and it had started to invest a bit heavily, they started to use a little more oak, and obviously oak was much more frequent. And certainly, but by the time the 2000s opened, there was a lot more oak. And in fact, to me, there was too much being used and pushed at these wines. And in many cases, the clones let's not get too down into that path, but the type of Chardonnay that was grown wasn't necessarily conducive to having a lot of oak. So some of the Chardonnay varieties of Chardonnay, or clones, as I call them, but they are clones. They are basically ones that produce quite high yields, and those high yields make for a much more neutral style of wine, where oak really adds a really strong flavor, but doesn't lift any fruit. The fruit is rather absent. So unfortunately, that was kind of one of the styles. And then I think largely this type of Chardonnay, which was selling in South Africa, certainly, was also copying a little bit of what the Australians up until that point were making, where that sort of buttery style from lots of not just lees contact but malolactic conversion kind of came to the fore. So that was the original style, and a lot of those came from fairly warm wine regions, largely following in the footsteps of the original wine regions, which were Paarl, Stellenbosch, and then they sort of worked their way out to places like Robertson. I mean, when I started making Chardonnay for myself, I mean, Robertson was the area that was the noted Chardonnay area, which arguably is, well, to me, not the perfect area. And the reason for that is what I think has changed, which is starting to really come through in the last 10 years from the 2010s and obviously more recently, is that the climate for Chardonnay needs to be cool, because the cool climate, which is where we are in Elgen, is like the coolest climate in South Africa, you retain much more acidity in the wine. And that means the wine really has a much more upright feel and a more chiseled texture. So you can etch, and of course, it has much more fruit. But at the same time, you can still use enough oak, but percipient oak, not too much. But it doesn't have that broadness and fatness that you used to get. So you don't get that oily, buttery character that is commonly associated. And I think that's kind of where the leap has happened. And to your Burgundy point, that I think is much more towards where Burgundy is, in the sense that's kind of where they are or have been. Although largely, more recently, there's been a shift from that style to a little richer style because of climate change. So their style is actually changing arguably more than our style.
Thank you. And to contextualize some of that, Chardonnay, the grape that we're tasting here, its home pretty much is Burgundy in France, and some of sort of what made it famous. So if you think of appellations like Chablis, and then further south, Meursault or Chassagne-Montrachet, you may have seen those words probably at the bottom of the expensive wine list. That's where they sit. But this is basically what sort of made Chardonnay famous, and I guess it's what great winemakers like Richard often refer back to in terms of what happens in Burgundy versus what happens in the rest of the world. And that's the context of Chardonnay around the world. I thought maybe, Richard, I would just show everyone, again, it's back to my slides, but there aren't many, where you are in terms from the, let me see if I do this, I think I can do that. And on here, okay, so just a quick map of South Africa. And so if we show in the south, so here's Cape Town. So we're in the very, very south, what's called the Western Cape. We're in the very south of South Africa. Here you have Stellenbosch, where is Bruver Rats and Danny and Johan. Through to Paarl, where it gets a little bit hotter. You see where my mouse is, hotter. Over to Wellington. You mentioned where we go, Franschhoek. You were going over to Robertson, which you talked about. This is where Jamie and Stephen de Vet are, and actually Renan Boerman making wines way out there in Montague. So for any of our angels that are familiar with those wines, this is sort of the extension of the whole country in terms of its winemaking capabilities. And then you yourself, Richard, are here in Elgin, much further south, and again close to the coast, so that nice fresh cooling influence. And is there anything else to add on there before I shut down?
Basically, just a slight error on the map that whilst most of it is fairly correct, you see it says Elgin, you see there's a the road, the N2 actually runs through that that blue line. In actual fact, most of Elgin is below that towards the sea, and Bot River, you'll actually see Bot River is to the right. So that red stuff underneath the sea, the Elgin actually runs to the sea. Yeah. So it's a slight anomaly. That's slightly erroneous in the map. And most of us are actually south of that, south of the N2, where we make the wine. So we're close to the sea. Most of it's between 5 and 15 kilometers from the sea.
We shall never see that map again. No, perfect. Thank you very much. and so basically, this comes back to the, let's say, the vibrancy, the crispness of the wine. So can you just explain to people very briefly, so again, it's the temperature of the sea air, is that it?
Well, there's a number of factors, and I could be here all night talking about them, but my main thing is that we have a little bit of altitude, about 300 to 500 meters above sea level. We have quite a lot of cloud cover, which means that the temperature is reduced during the summer, and it means that we get less light, which means that the grapes ripen much slower. We have obviously cooler nighttime temperatures, which help with retaining acidity in the wine. Or the bunches, I should say. And then, of course, because we're close to the sea, we're ameliorated by the breezes. On a warmer day, we get a sea breeze coming in at around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's something that is helping the whole thing. And I think it's worth just mentioning one thing, because obviously there's a number of winemakers from South Africa on the site, and it is important to. It's a concept that we talk when we talk about France. We talk about Burgundy. We talk about the Loire, Rhone, south of France, where obviously Beaujolais is, where with Provence and stuff. But in actual fact, there's quite vast differences. I mean, we know when we travel down there's sort of 6, 7, 8 hours. And then we really understand the difference between the climate. But actually, here there's quite a little difference, in the sense of if I travel to Stellenbosch to go and see Carmen, for example, it's only going to take me an hour to get there. But the difference is absolutely vast, because in Stellenbosch, I'm going to get temperatures of 45 degrees or 40 degrees. In Elgen, we rarely go above 35 degrees. We are we've hardly ever gone. We have about up to 8 hours a year over 35 degrees. So it's quite a different set of variables, and that has a big impact. We pick almost 5 weeks later than Stellenbosch. So that is another point. So
that's a huge picking 5 weeks later. That is a
massive. It's a huge difference. So just as another point, just to add to one of the things, and that is because I get asked on the site quite a lot, and it's because I see there's so many angels looking at this. The other thing with this wine which you're tasting is that it is a 2020. It's still a very young wine. It is one of the advantages with a cool climate at Elgen is that we have the ability to age these wines, and in actual fact, that aging that Burgundy kind of expects you to do as a consumer, in the new world, it's something that we're not so familiar about doing, but we should look at trying to age them, because they will actually improve and complex over the next 2 to 3 years, if not more. I've actually had a few older ones, and I've even seen some of the angels having that 2012. 2012 is certainly aged, but certainly, wines from 15, 16, 17 are drinking really well at the moment. So, yeah.
2020, this is 2020, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah. Yes, 2020, yeah.
But it was absolutely beautiful, was it not, as a vintage?
Yes, we had an interesting conversation about it, because I know it's probably sorcery, but there is some sort of adage that in South Africa, the best years are the odd numbered years. So 15, 17, 19, 21, 23. I mean, go figure. But Chardonnay in particular performed extremely well in 2020. And it is actually one of the best years we've ever had. It had, I think, largely the combination that we'd finished the drought in 18. We had really, really strong, much more normal weather, and a little bit cooler as well. Not really super cool like 21, but it was enough to ripen the grapes perfectly harmoniously, and without the problems of disease. And that's the only problem we do have here, because we also get a lot of rain. I didn't mention that, but that's a negative. So, it's a very good positive to keep the grapes growing, but it's a negative because we have that huge rainfall can lead to problems with rot and associated diseases, and that can be an issue. But in 2020, we didn't have that problem. We had very healthy bunches.
Yeah. Right. Well, I tell you, Richard, we have some questions on the Q&A, which I should be able to take most of these, but I'll go through them briefly. So, from Lindsay McKenna, do extreme heat variations affect wine taste during travel for export? The answer is yeah. Yeah. Would you agree, Richard?
Yeah. Well, I wrote my dissertation on it. And it's a really good question, Lindsay. The actual concept is the variations. If it's fluctuating temperature, for example, it goes from 15 to 30 or 40 degrees. It's a problem if it's doing it on a daily basis, because your wine is heating up and cooling down in the bottle when it's being transported. And that's a bad thing, because it's getting that expansion and that will eventually push the cork. And of course, what is interesting is when I did my research, some of these bottles are hitting 50, 60, 70 degrees. I mean, bearing in mind, it can be 35 outside, but inside that hot box, it can be substantially more than that. In actual fact, if you kept the temperature at 30 degrees, not that anybody really would, but I did do an experiment on this. If you keep it at 30 degrees, it actually has less effect. It still isn't a good thing. It will age the wine slightly more prematurely, but you just have to drink it a bit earlier if you aged it at 30. But at least if you kept it at 30, it's better than keeping it at 15 and then going from 15 to 30 on a daily basis.
Well summarized. From a dissertation, from 10,000 words into 1 minute. Perfect. Thank you. And Paul asks, thanks for the tasting tips. Any advice on the type of glass using the trendy tumbler type here, but should you use the more traditional shape? The first answer, and I know this might sound like a get out clause, Paul, but you just do whatever the hell you like. And secondly, you do whatever the hell is available. And then in terms of what you should do, I have a couple of glasses from different brands, and they open up, and you know, some wines, the wider the base, and I'm literally talking about sometimes the breadth of my hand there, there's a really nice base, and you put Richard's Chardonnay in there, a white wine rather than a red wine, but to the same effect is that you want oxygen to get in there, and you swirl it like that, and it just sort of opens it up like a decanter. And then you smell it, and it starts to give off quite a bit more. And it's a serious business, the glass business, in terms of the technology and the shape of what each glass is trying to do. So I would say perhaps treat yourself or drop hints to whomever you like to get you some nice glasses at Christmas. You have, I think on our site, we're still selling Schatzwiesel. They're great glasses. Then others are Zalto and Riedel, and these are, you know, different glass manufacturers, but I promise you for sure you will see a difference from your tumbler to the glass I'm borrowing here to the ones I mentioned, Zalto, Z-A-L-T-O, or Riedel, or I-E-D-E-L. And you buy any of those in different shapes, and you will notice they put the same wine into the different glass, and any novice, you spend time on it and then smell and taste, there is a difference, and it's incredible. And that's just an additional perk to the excitement of the world of wine. Haley, yeah.
Another name to add to that would be these ones, the Gabriel glass.
Yeah,
the Gabriel glass, which is actually not an expensive glass, and it's like an all-round one, so you can use it for everything.
That's a good shout. And I think, yeah, I remember Eamon bought some of those, or Johan Kruger sorted them out for Eamon and something like that. Yeah, that's true. I don't have them. I must get them as well. Good shout. Thank you. So a couple more questions here, and then we'll move on to the rosé. If you're already on the rosé, knock yourself out. We'll catch up. Haley and Chris ask, hello, would the temperature travel cause any bitterness? Unclear, is that part of the original intent of the wine or not? Not usually a Chardonnay drinker. I think to save you on this one, Richard, I'll say is that this wine is, I'd say, positively oaked. It adds to the complexity. And I think there's a question coming up here. The next question is from Dean. He says, the Chardonnay smells like burnt toast, but tastes like whiskey. Why would this be? Please don't get me wrong, I do like it. I understand where you're coming from. The burnt toast, the potential for bitterness, as you might explain, I think it is possibly the integration of the fruit with the quality of French oak, and it's very good quality French oak. And what it's just quite apparent at the moment, obvious, let's say up front. And if you like oaked Chardonnay, then you're going to love it. If you're unsure about that kind of thing, it might sort of stand out because it doesn't taste like Pinot Grigio, which is sort of light and delicate. New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, which is pungent and vibrant. This is a wine that almost is towards a meal. You know, it's got a hell of a lot more going into it. And as Richard said, in 2 or 3 years' time, that oak component will soften, mellow, and integrate. So the bitterness you're doing now may well be related to the oak. And then in terms of the other question was burnt toast. It's a great descriptor because the oak is literally toasted in front of a fire to give a slight char, which protects and adds a bit of complexity to the wine. So you're all picking up on the right things, and I think that's the value of this evening, is just explaining it in different ways. I'm going to do two more questions and then we'll move on to the rosé. And I see there are more questions than just two, but I'm just going to cut it at two. No name, but 5271886. With the increase in temperatures and extreme weathers, where will the varietals be in 10 years' time? Massive question. I think well, I'll ask you that, Richard. What about your Chardonnay you take from certain vineyards today? Will you be taking the same grapes from the same vineyard in 10 years' time?
I think it's a great question, and it's a really hard one to really answer because there's a number of theories and strategies as to what people are doing. Firstly, I think that the temperature difference that we're experiencing, okay, you could say it's been fast, but it's been slow. It's been slow forming, and there has been instances in the past that we've seen very warm temperatures. Admittedly, we seem to be on a succession of very warm temperatures, and that's having an impact. What I can say is that if you take grape varieties, for example, like Chardonnay or any grape, to be honest, in an area like Elgen, what you will find is when the sun is very hot, you get, or what I can tell you is that you get something called, you get sun damage, like sunburn, like you would on a skin that's slightly too white, I suppose. And therefore, Elgin tends to get sunburn very easily if it does get really, really hot. As I mentioned earlier, it doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it gets burnt. Stellenbosch experiences temperature much hotter than Elgin, but rarely gets sunburn. Because over the last 20 or 30 or 40 years, they've adapted to having almost like a sunscreen on them, which means that they've kind of adapted as they've got warmer. Now, it doesn't mean to say that the quality has got better or worse. It just means to say there is a lot of adaptation. And I think this is an important feature. It's not just a temperature basis. The second part is that there is a lot of other factors. It's not that the temperature is always getting warmer. It's often getting cooler, or more importantly, more eccentric to the weather. One of the issues we're facing more is that we get a lot of wind in November, and that's damaging a lot of young shoots. That's reducing our yield. That makes it uneconomically viable, which is something Burgundy has had with spring frosts and a number of other issues, and Bordeaux for that matter, which is much worse than actually having very hot weather. The hot weather obviously is a bit of a problem if we can't irrigate. And I see actually Bordeaux is going to start irrigating from the latest wildfires. There's that. So there is ways to ameliorate that and still get good temperatures, still get good grapes. The last thing is, which is interesting, is that if you look at the best vintages of the world, they actually often have been in warmer vintages. That's the quirky concept. The very cool vintages tend to produce classic wines, as they call it, and interesting wines, but I'm never quite sure if they are the most complex, the most rich, the deepest, the most concentrated, and the most compelling wines. So in a way, it's a bad thing, probably in the long run. And yes, if we sit here in 10 years' time and we're now going to the next level and we're 2 degrees warmer, whatever we are at, I think there could be some more issues. But I think largely there's a number of factors we can, and there's a lot of vineyard practices we can do to ameliorate some of the temperature gains.
Well summarized. Thank you very much, Richard. And that second question I was going to take, but Richard, it's a one-word answer. What is the terroir? Is it clay? The soil type? The soil type.
5 words. Okay. Bockenfeld shales, sandstone, quartz, and gravel.
Well handled. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to the beautiful Chateau Saint-Hilaire Provence Rosé. And I imagine most of you are already drinking this and getting stuck into it. But given the beautiful weather that we've experienced, most of us, and I'm in the south, so I'm not sure what it's like in the north, but I've even been to Kerry in Ireland, which usually doesn't, see the light of day in the middle of the summer, and it's been beautiful there. So I imagine the sun has touched some parts of the British Isles at this point, and it's a great opportunity to taste this great wine. And so just as a reminder of where this wine came from, not where it comes from, but where it originated from in terms of for naked wines, we asked our archangels, who are the guys you'll see on the website. They sort of help out with some of the questions, and they're also to support the winemakers. We brought them into our office in Norwich, what was it, 4 or 5 years ago, and we wanted a new Provence producer, and we asked them, can you help us taste these wines? And so they came in, tasted a load of wines, but I don't know, did we taste them blind? Can't remember. We tasted through them, and then we went to different groups and we judged. And out of 30 or so wines, this producer, this wine, came out top. So Bruno Lapierre, he's the winemaker down in Provence. I'm not going to show you a map here, but I think you'll all be pretty familiar. It's the south of France. If you fly into Marseille, so if Benjamin Darnaud is over here towards Spain in Carcassonne, and Katie Jones again towards Perpignan and up in Touchon, and here you're over in Marseille, the whole other side, you go about 30 minutes up the road. I know because I've driven as legally fast as I could to get to the airport from this winery and made the plane. And it's so it's a place, it's the home, well, it's well recognized for high quality rosé. And we taste our wines. Today I've tasted 60 or something like that, 60 wines today, benchmarking. And so just to let you know about that, so we taste every one of our wines against wines in the market to see, does our market price stand up to, we have our angel price, and above that on the website you see market price. And by that we're saying, as an angel, you're getting the quality and you're paying this price. In the market, you get the same quality, but you're paying a higher price. So we rigorously taste blind, meaning that we don't see what the bottle is, it's in a bag, and we taste and we go, okay, we know that they're all today. We did Chile, Argentina, and Germany, and Luxembourg, and we tasted those blind. When we do this, when we taste this wine blind without knowing what the bottle is, against other Provence rosés, it knocks it out of the park. I will also say that Beaujolais Rosé always knocks everything out of the park. So what I mean is we have great confidence in the quality and the style here. Richard, maybe I could ask you, just for, someone you are related to Naked Wines, but you're not as ingrained as I am, where my position, just so from an alternative position, your view on Provence, does it warrant all the spotlight that it has, or what are the pros and cons of Provence Rosé?
I think basically, does it warrant the spot? I think it does nowadays. I think that the way they make it has changed considerably over the last 30 years. And I think for many, many makers back in the styles of rosé, which then, but sitting on the beach, they tasted fabulous, and then they put them in a trunk, got back, and sat in England. Right, it was raining outside, and these things just didn't taste the same. So yeah, I think there's been a massive increase in quality. I think it's been a good thing because weirdly, of all the things that have led this quality rise, is this interesting desire to have a pale color. And I would highlight that because I even read a book called The Palest Rosé where people were looking for it. So there is that. And I think furthermore, there's been quite a bit of investment there with regards to producers outside the region. I mean, particularly from Bordeaux and other regions where they've started to really put money into producing fantastic wines from some bigger estates than they used to be. Yeah,
so that's good. It's good to know you think it does warrant it. I mean, and back to the winemaking here. This is 3 different grape varieties. I think in our tasting booklet it says it's a Cinsault blend. Cinsault is a high-yielding, thin-skinned grape variety, but also in this blend is Grenache, which I think some of you are familiar with, and Shiraz. Okay, those 3 grapes. And yeah, as we were talking earlier, Richard, traditional winemaking. So basically, depending on the color you want, it goes from you crush most majority red grapes, you squeeze it like those from the supermarket or the greengrocer, and the juice that comes out of a red grape is white juice, and you squeeze it. However, if you leave the red skin in contact with the clear juice, you slowly dye the color of the wine, and it adds a bit of structure as well. So in Provence here, they're deciding what color do I want to end up with, which is where Richard's going on, the palest rosé in the world. To, in Spain in the past, there was sort of a deeper color rosé. Now that's sort of changing, and most people are following towards this paler style. So it is literally a matter of hours of contact with the skin. So they crush the grapes, the juice is white. These 3 red grapes I mentioned, Cinsault, Grenache, Shiraz, 3 red grapes, all have white juice. The juice falls in, it's white. And then the skins sit with them. And then they time it. Some people by the minute, the half hour, so on. And it goes, and it slowly gets less white towards light pale and so forth. And it goes on like this. And so, Richard, I mean, pulling this out of somewhere, roughly how many hours skin contact do you imagine a wine like that would be? 6?
Actually, it's an interesting point, but I would say maybe up to 6, but increasingly less than that, because whilst Grenache doesn't have a lot of anthocyanin, that's the color, you tend to find that it has enough color to give that lovely paleness. I mean, this is quite pale. Obviously, it's seeking towards a more pinky, and this is to me more sort of, it's got that salmon color, but it's also got a touch of that onion skin note. But interestingly, it would be worth saying actually just at this point, but most grapes in Provence are picked by machine, and they would be picked at night. And by picking at night, it's much cooler, so they're not going to get the oxidation, and they're not going to get that slightly more browny color, which we're less excited about. So therefore, the skin contact, which results when it's nice and cool, will actually be, probably not that long, but enough just to give out a little bit of paleness. But I would say even 6 hours is probably the limit.
The limit, exactly. Yeah. So that's a fine window of contact. There's a question there from Mark Russell. I imagine the rosé should be drunk young when it is fresh and vibrant, correct? But what happens if you age it? You get a slight discoloration, so it loses the purity of the color of the rosé you're looking at. Now it goes to towards an onion skin. It slightly browns in a little way, and then actually rosés, some can be aged, but what I taste in this wine, yes, it's vibrant, but actually remember, this is juice that was destined for red wine. It just didn't get the deep color, and it didn't get the tannin structure. But when you taste it and close your eyes and you taste it, actually there's quite a bit of depth and mouthfeel and roundness to it, if you can sort of let yourself go there. So in terms of how will it age, it doesn't have the foundation structural parts of the tannin and polyphenols and so on to carry it, but it, you'd want to keep it 2 to 3 years, is my opinion, for its best condition. But it doesn't fall off a cliff. It's the quality of the juice, the origin of the juice that would carry it. There's another question from Anne. Can you tell us anything about orange wine? We bought Root Gris and not sure how to drink it. Is it like a rosé? So Root Gris, everyone, is a fantastic wine made from the Moschfilero grape from Greece, from Arcadia, which is the big sort of finger bits that stick out on west of Athens. And it is, orange wines in the sense that Moschfilero has a pink skin grape with a muscat-like character. And this wine was left in contact with the skins for a certain amount of time. And so it has a pink, I'd almost call it peach color. And you drink it chilled. And look at it towards a rosé, but actually it's a fantastic wine. It has a bit of where I said this rosé from Provence doesn't have the tannin of a red wine, that wine does have a little bit of a grip and a little bit of a structure. So I strongly recommend that wine to everyone, but that's how you would drink that wine, Anne. Shall we move on to the fourth wine? And we are in no rush, but it's also important to keep an eye on time. So the fourth wine, so before I do, I wonder, of those 3 wines that we just experienced, would you like to give us a view? Perhaps, Laura, you could throw up a vote. Oh, that was quick. Thank you very much. What is your feeling? And this, by the way, allow yourself a mind of curiosity. So first thing you taste, like, do I like it? Yes or no. That's what we always ask. Would you buy it again? Yes or no. Here, just in terms of exploration, what can you see yourself looking at a bit more and getting to know a bit more, whether it's Richard's Elgen Chardonnay, and he talked about aging it, where will it go, how will it look? The Treixadura, which has no oak, but it's from a region you may not have heard of, Northwest Spain, Ribeiro. And then you've got this rosé where I said, maybe age it 2 or 3 years max, but it's brilliant as it is now. So we've got a vote going on. In the meantime, I'm going to open my fourth red wine, which I'm very much looking forward to taking, have been for a long time. Let me pour it out here. So waiting for the results of that to come in. And then we've got this. And Richard, I look forward to telling you about this wine. It's a very exciting wine. We had it in the Fine Wine Club originally. There you go. That's that's a strong lead from the first wine, and then strongly supported, I'd say, by Richard's Elgen Chardonnay. And yeah, great, interesting, good to know. I concur. Well, I've already put my cards on the table how much I love Richard's Chardonnay, but I also concur that first wine, Treixadura, is absolutely brilliant. Gold medal at Decanter Wine Awards, and aren't we lucky to have them all in our scope? So we move on to the fourth wine, wine number 4. This is from Jimenez Landi, is the name of the producer. Okay, and it's, in fact, it's from a place called Mentrida. It's Spain, and in Jose Bernardes Jimenez Landi, it's a mouthful of a name, is the winemaker, and Mentrida is a region outside of Madrid. So I'm not going to go into maps again here. You just have to picture it out. We looked at Spain. Madrid it's not dead in the center. It's kind of north, but central north. And around Madrid, you have the Sierra de Gredos, G-R-E-D-O-S, Gredos. Those are the mountains. And they're known for producing really good, fresh Garnacha. And Garnache is the same grape that is grown in, southern France, Châteauneuf-du-Pape, and various places around the world. But here, because of its altitude, about 600 meters, which is high for this area, produces, Garnacha of great freshness and purity and fruitiness. Okay, here these are relatively old vines for the area, 20 to 40 years old, not so old, but 40-year-old vines. It's farmed biodynamically, which I'll come back to and explain, because I've explained before, but I'll just touch on, I'll come back to it. And it's a blend of Garnacha, Shiraz, 30%. So that's what's giving it a bit of the color, because Garnacha, high altitude Garnacha would be paler red in color, lovely and vibrant. But here, I think the Shiraz is giving the depth, darkness of color, and then an anomaly 5% Cabernet. But strangely, that part of central Spain seems to grow quite a bit of Cabernet, even though you wouldn't expect it. But they're just putting that in for the blend because a little bit of spice. Excuse me. So I'm going to smell and taste it now, as I hope you all join me. So this is a wine with quite a bit of structure. We've moved from the two whites and the rosé. We're straight into structure. Now, what I can suggest to you all, if that structure and tannin is, hits you quite strongly, where this wine will go, whether it's in your tasting back here, or rather in the bottle that you buy, if you leave it open for about an hour. Now, I haven't said that in terms of this session, but that kind of thing opens up. In fact, my dearest colleague, Toby, who might be listening in this evening, he was only telling me earlier when we were tasting A Million Wines that he tasted this wine last week, left it open, and the next day he came back to it and it had just sort of softened, and described it very much as a food wine, a wine that requires food. So if you think of the fat of the meat, or the char of the aubergine, or baba ganoush, or those beautiful vegetarian vegan dishes, and that's when this wine will come alive. So it is a wine that's quite structured and requires a bit of aeration, and that's just basically poured into a decanter. If you don't have a decanter, if you just have a jug, anything that you water vessel, and then you pour it back in, and that just starts to let it open up. I just wanted to show you quickly, just to contextualize where we are and the beautiful people and the family behind this wine. Let me just share my screen. This will do. So here we have the family so the grapes are hand harvested, which is quite a bit of work, really, to hand harvest all these grapes. And they're brought in and they are foot stomped in the winery by the family. You see the kids, I mean, health and safety will go nuts there, but it's a bit of crack. So, the wine tastes great, but they're a beautiful family, but I guess it's just the relationship between their area where they live, farming biodynamically, harvesting by hand, and then stomping on grapes themselves. I think they truly just believe in the art the artisan world of winemaking. And it's beautiful. It's great to work with people like that because it is heart and soul. You want everything to be technically correct, everything no faults, quality, the label to look great and everything. But when you know that there's soul and people behind it, for me, it also adds a bit of value. Biodynamics, basically, as you will have heard, you are all familiar, I guess, with organics, whether it's your carrots or the next thing. And pretty much everything was organic before Second World War, when they had to introduce to regrow things, to get things, food, to regenerate food sources and everything. They started adding fertilizers and so on. But biodynamics is basically, it's an extension of organics, where people look at the energy and the synergy between the moon and the earth. You think of the waves and the tides, and you think of the quarters and the full moons that go on. They choose and they follow the orientation of the moon with regards pruning. That means chopping down the vines after harvest. And harvesting, picking itself, and some of the processes in the winery. So it's very much in tune with Mother Nature. That's where they are. Now it's an extreme, it's a viewpoint of many, and it does not mean that all the best wines made should be made biodynamically, but those that are, I like them, I get a kick from them, I get a little bit of extra energy or vibrancy from them. But if I tasted them blind, in the black bag where I wouldn't know what it is, would I be able to detect? Probably not. There's Jock, are we? Hey, Jock, flashing in and out. Anyway, we'll continue. So we have this wine, this beautiful wine from, furthermore, it's unfiltered. So it's just to explain a bit of, they're maintaining all of the goodness, the richness all the way through. But a critical piece of the bottling stage is winemakers would filter a wine. That's to remove any loose bits and pieces, like tiny bits, but that might actually cause any form of re-fermentation, make the wine fizzy again or something like that. And here they're just letting all of it come through. And what you get usually with wines that have not been filtered is just a bit more textural element. You get a little bit more mouthfeel because the filtration can take away some of that. And in this instance, so if you've let it in your glass to open up for a bit, I'm going to have another taste myself, but I just want to see how this is now opened up and given a little bit more. Richard, have you tasted it?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
And your thoughts? That's good. It's really good. A lot of power in the wine.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I really enjoy it, actually. I mean, it's more challenging on the gums. You're getting that frontal gum tannic texture, but you've got a lot of that really fleshy fruit at the back. I mean, it's calling out for a little bit of food, clearly, because it leaves the palate with quite a dry, chalky sensation. But it's lovely. I like its savory umami character, which is different. It's a different style of wine. And also it's got quite a lot of concentration. It's not a light-bodied wine. This is quite a serious wine.
Yeah, exactly. It is. It's got concentration and it requires food. So, I mean, thank you. And then the purpose here is just to sort of taste wines that you may not have typically reached for, considered. Here we are in the mountains around Spain. In fact, the proximity to Madrid means that these wines, Mentrida, now called Mentrida Toledo, they were the source of wine for the House of Kings. So basically, the palace in Madrid. This in previous centuries, this is where they would have brought their wine in from. So it's nice to explore, taste some new wines. But we will move on to wine number 5. Wine number 5 is Beaujolais, and I adore this wine, and I adore Beaujolais. So this is Domaine de Granit Doré. The winemaker is Marie-Laure Rollet. And if there are any rugby fans on here, I was with Toby in Paris. It was February 2020, and we were tasting, and 75% of the conversation was about the Six Nations, 25% was about the different grape varieties and the wines and the pricing and could we work together. But every time I speak with Marie-Laure Rollet, she wants to talk about rugby, and so do I. So if you're a rugby fan, get on her wall, which perhaps Simon, you could share a link to Marie-Laure's wall on Naked Wines, and you can get involved on the rugby chat. Can France win the World Cup at home? I don't think so. Ireland are number one, so we'll have to see about that. Okay, so we move on. So what I'm proud and enthusiastic and excited to tell you about is my favorite wine region in the world, and that is Beaujolais. It's an area that people go early, and they're actually mostly disappointed when I say that. And I go, because you're a master of wine, you buy all the wines from Naked Wines. How is something so cheap and cheerful your favorite wines? And simply, it's simplicity. And that is what I love. It is a comfort blanket. It is a pizza wine. It is a Tuesday night wine. When you're tasting, or when you're fortunate enough to taste the great wines of the world so often, not so often, I don't taste the great wines of the world so often, but when you're fortunate enough to taste such a diversity of wines often, coming back to Beaujolais, it is just soft, supple sound. You know where you are with it, and it's pretty reliable. And one thing I'd like to explain, and I just have to check now, there's quite a chance that I did or did not set this up. I'm going to go for it. No, it wouldn't be that. I'm going to go for it here. Excuse me if this doesn't work. I'm going to cancel that. See what happens if I do this. Yeah, okay, good. Perfectly orchestrated. Thank you very much. I practiced this a few times today. One thing to bear in mind is, you'll remember Beaujolais Nouveau, where it was cheap and cheerful. Third Thursday. It's very difficult for an Irish person to say. Third Thursday in November. And they would release the Beaujolais Nouveau, so it was made in September or August, September, and it's cheap and cheerful and glugged down. Okay, so that's the image people have of Beaujolais. But really, here in front of you is the gold of Beaujolais, and there are crus. So a cru meaning a specific region, a gravity, like a championship, top of the table. And there are 10 crus in Beaujolais. You start up here in Saint-Amour, where we are now. And I won't name them all out, but the ones you might recognize, Shiraz, Fleury. I think lots of you will have heard of Fleury, Morgon, and I'll stop there, Bruley. Okay. And what's interesting is here, question about the terroir, but the soil type changes. It's largely granite, but in areas like Fleury, it's towards sandy, but Shiraz is granitic, and so is a bit Saint-Amour. And what that means is, whilst all the jungle juice, the happy, third Thursday in November stuff, Beaujolais Nouveau, it can come from anywhere around the whole area, even a blend across areas. It's the leftovers, it's the bits and pieces, and actually it's perfectly quaffable and enjoyable. This is where you get into specifics of what each of them tastes like. Shiraz, for example, tastes nothing like, is a step away from Fleury. Fleury is light, soft, fruity, delicious, perfect for a lunch, perfect with fish, those kind of things. And God bless Fleury. It's so quaffable, it's great. It's not complex, it's often not memorable, but I appreciate its existence. Shiraz, on the other hand, it's got depth, structure, tannin, body, and it ages. It ages magnificently. So does Morgon. Where's Morgon? Here's Morgon. Morgon ages so well. Here we're tasting Saint-Amour. And I just want to open your minds and awareness to, when someone says Beaujolais, you can say, do you mean the cheap stuff or do you mean the good stuff? And that's your party trick. And when they're talking about the good stuff, once you get into this, it opens a whole, and it's affordable luxury. This stuff is not expensive, but produces great wine. So we're in Saint-Amour. Here you're on pink granite and a mixture of soils, but mostly granite. And therefore, if you've got granite and it's granitic, it gives a sort of a tension, a structure, a tightness to the palate. I'm going to stop the share, but I really that is my favorite wine region, favorite wines, and I all of a sudden cannot find how to stop the share. I'm sure it'll pop up here somehow, or maybe I'll just forget that. 1 second. New share? No, I don't really want to do a new share. I want to do a stop share. Or maybe I didn't even share in the first place. Did I share? Let's do that. Okay. Oh, that's not working. Beg your pardon. There's the stop. No. Okay, I've lost you for a moment. Beg your pardon. Right, well, I'm going to continue on and just taste the wine until I suss out how to work this. Richard, your thoughts on this wine?
So yeah, I think it's actually interesting. Saint-Amour is not an area that I'm hugely familiar with in terms of the fact that most of the wines are exactly what you said, fleury, the sort of the Moulin Avance, Cheroux, Bruy, and obviously Morgon. But what I liked about this, I think that it's an interesting, because it's got this wonderful granitic. I mean, it really has got a granitic texture. It's got that sort of mineral-aged quarry dust, whatever you want to call it. But I wrote here that it's got a lovely lift on the front palate, and then it's coated in this sort of flesh. And my tasting note was tinned strawberries. It's not fresh strawberries. It's like tinned strawberries that have not the most exciting things to ever have, but they just reminded me of my childhood when you'd open a tin of strawberries. Not that anybody would do that now, thank heavens. And that's kind of what it's got, that richness, a little bit of syrupy to the texture, but it coats the tannin. So to me, works extremely well, and how Beaujolais should.
Perfectly summarized, especially the tinned strawberries, which, yeah, to some extent, it doesn't detract from the wine, but, you know, yeah, it brings back happy memories. But that's what I love is the volume, the feeling in the mouth, softness, and the obvious red fruit. You know what you're going to get. And actually, most Beaujolais of these crus are pretty reliable. When you think about one region amongst the whole world, today we were tasting Argentina, it didn't deliver as consistently as Beaujolais does, in my opinion. So it's just something for people to come back to and go, yeah, I've got bad memories. When someone says Riesling, they go, oh, that sweet blue nun stuff. It's like, yeah, okay, that happened, but really Riesling is incredible, you know, and it's worth revisiting. And that's it. And I think that's sort of, you know, you and I are wine experts, and to be able to share, like, yeah, just stop and think again, I think is a good opportunity. I'm going to grab one. I think there's some good positive comments coming in around wine number 5. I'm glad you appreciate it. I adore it myself, and that's why I wanted to share. You know, at its price point, don't you get quite a lot of, you know, you get a lot back for and reward for this quality. The question there, let me see, in your opinion, in your opinion, how do blended reds stand up against non-blended reds? That's from Donna. Donna, that's a fair question. And actually, it's not complex at all. It is, in effect, this red wine here, which is Gamay, 100% Gamay, that's the law. Each wine region, most wine regions in France, at least, or Europe at least, have quite strict laws. You can do this, you can't do that. And some people go, bugger that, why do I want to pay attention to all this? But it means you can put Saint-Amour on the label, and you can put Fleury. And if you put Fleury on the label, you're going to sell a lot of wine to restaurants that want to sell Fleury. So you follow the laws. And the laws here in Burgundy say it must be 100% Gamay. And so even though this is 100% Gamay, this is a blend of different Gamays from different places. Meaning that vineyard and that. So everything is blended eventually, whether it is different grapes or it's different vineyards, or it is a little bit of the oaked Gamay and a little bit of the non-oaked Gamay. The finale is the sum of all parts. You know, that's the best. And that's what you're going for in a blend. When you think about, when we call it a Bordeaux blend, that is Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, maybe Malbec, and Cabernet Franc, 4 grapes all blended together. Why are you doing it? All you're doing is like a recording studio, but the drums, bring in the drums, okay, lower the bass, and all that, and you're just, and then the sound, you think of an Adele track, it sounds magnificent because someone did an incredible job in the blending studio. And that's, so blends are great, non-blends are great, it's all the same. A lot of work went into delivering it how it is today. Okay, we're going to move on to the final wine, wine number 6. And actually, I am delighted to have on the call and standing in the wings, our dearest colleague for a long time, Jock Harvey. Good on you, Jock. Good morning from Australia. How are you, buddy?
Good morning, Ray. How are you, mate?
I'm okay, but it's, you know, it's late in the evening and we've got wines in front of us. Are you on the coffee or are you on the jungle juice?
I've got one in a glass. I've got a coffee as well. So yeah, early in the morning over here.
Good man. And can I introduce you? I'm not sure if you met Richard Kershaw before from Surrey.
All right, Richard, how are you, mate? I've been listening intently. How are things over there?
Pretty good. Yep, no, pretty good. I see you're also wearing a top. It's quite cold here as well.
Well, I just want to, while we're just before we start talking about the wine, Ray, well done knocking off the Kiwis in down in New Zealand. As you know, they're a bit of a nemesis of Australia, but it's interesting. Richard's sitting there. You guys have got South Africa in Paris. I reckon you're pretty smart, Ray. You've got Romania in Bordeaux, and then you're down in Nantes again for another game. So I think this wine thing's a bit of a scam. It's just an excuse to, go and watch Ireland play rugby in France.
Yeah, I had, and please excuse everyone who's not interested in rugby, just allow us 30 seconds or 60 seconds for this, but I can't remember the winemaker. It might have been Donny Stadler messaging me from South Africa going, hey, Ray, are you going to the rugby in Paris? I was like, no, I'm not really sure. And he goes, yeah, because like if you go, then I've got a reason to go, and I can tell the wife why I can go. And so everything is a front for just drinking wine and drinking beer and watching rugby. But anyway, yeah, no, Ireland are number 1 in the world, New Zealand are number 5, and this has been recorded, so you can quote me on that. On to the wine. Jock, thank you very much for joining us. I think what time is it where you are, just to set the scene?
It's 5:40 in the morning.
Wowza. Man, thank you very much. And I know you've been in the sidelines for a little bit as well. I wanted to build up to your great announcement. Jock, can you introduce this wine and start off also just to frame it? This is your Luna McLaren Vale Shiraz, but the accolades it has won. Why don't we just sort of position exactly where we are with this? What are the accolades this vintage or previous vintages have won for this wine?
Thanks, Ray. This obviously McLaren Vale is quite well known for Shiraz, and this wine is a lovely, juicy, full-bodied, fruit-forward wine. We put a squirt of Barbera in it to help with a little bit of acid on the backbone. It's been very well received. It's most recently got a gold medal in Vienna, so been rated very highly by Halliday. And we wanted to make a wine that is very easy to enjoy, but it's a really good food match as well. So very happy with the wine, and really grateful for the support from all the angels as well who are enjoying the wine.
Yeah, and you mentioned Halliday. James Halliday is the most famous wine critic in Australia. It could be said, or up there amongst those, and he's been in for a long time. But he's reviewed your wines, all of your wines, very highly, isn't it? I mean, he personally recognizes the quality of everything that you're doing. You got the Alpha Crucis and the other wines. So you seem to maintain a strong level of consistency. Is that? I know, Jock, you're strongly involved in the vineyard as well, and the viticulture. So how do you maintain? How do you knock it out of the park each year?
I think as Richard would understand, sometimes with the weather, there's a little bit of luck involved, but it's also attention to detail. And we're fortunate that we've got a few vineyards scattered over the district, so we've got a bit of a tapestry of fruit that we can choose from. But it's a bit of a focus in the vineyards results in very strong wines. So it's a lot of work, but good fun. And as Richard knows, when you get an award, you think the wine judges got it right. When you get a poor score, of course, the winemakers don't know what they're doing. So the judges don't know what they're doing. So take them when you can get them.
Exactly.
And
I agree.
Yeah, and you're a judge, Richard, and I have judged. Well. Yeah, so we know what we're doing most of the time, but most of the time we don't know what we're doing. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
True.
And in terms of, I know people want to know, and I think in our booklet here, in terms of the age ability of this wine, Jock, we would have put this on the website. No, I take it back. It doesn't say it on here, but it'll say it on the website. But what I think the wine's drinking perfectly now. It's absolutely gorgeous, dangerously gorgeous. And how long can it keep? And maybe, if you said 10 years, for example, can you break it into what it will look like in 3, 5, and 10 years? Where does the wine go in flavors?
Ray, you've heard me talk before about wine under screw cap, and I'm a big advocate of when you have a wine under screw cap and it's young, to decant it, even the day before, but it gets some air into the wine. It really does open it up. The reductive character goes and the fruit comes forward. They're the sort of characters that you get as you age the wine over time. However, I think it's a good rule if you like a wine, buy 6 or 12 bottles and have one every 6 months until it's gone. It's a pretty good rule, because you can actually watch the wine evolve and you remember it the whole way through. And there are occasions when it actually tastes so good you might open 2 on a weekend and then it's gone.
And what do you buy like that, Jock? Or what's the last wine that you bought when you went, I like this wine, I'm going to buy 6 or I'm going to buy 12? That might be a wine in the local market that we can't get here, but just as an example.
One of the wines that I really enjoyed was a wine that we actually produced, which is Montepulciano, and it was a wine that I knew was selling out, and I had to grab a few bottles and put it away. And as Richard would well know, sometimes in our game it's a trade where we'll swap a box with one of our mates, and telling one of your friends, of course, because we're very competitive, that you do like their wine and would they like a swap, then you often get a little bit of banter in return that, there's nothing of yours that I like, so no, don't worry about it.
Right. And Richard, and any shared thoughts? You taste wines from around the world frequently, as an MW, but also just as a winemaker. I know that South Africans import or try and get their hands on as many international wines and compare and contrast. So your appreciation or disappreciation for this wine, feel free to slate it.
Well, actually, I just have to pick up one thing Jock said about swapping wine. It's one of those amusing moments where at the end of a wine show, somebody comes and says, "Listen, we'll swap some wine with you," and you turn around and say, "Okay, cool. Well, if you give me 2 bottles of yours, I'll give you 1 of mine." So, which doesn't usually get a good response, but no, I'm really enjoying it. I wrote a few notes here, but I mean, just going back to your initial question, we don't get a huge amount of Australian wines here, obviously, because we don't get a lot of overseas wines, but what we do get is largely from Europe, and mostly Europe, to be honest. I mean, a little bit from, as I say, Australia, and a little bit from North America. But no, I mean, I had a chance to travel to McLaren Vale and meet with a number of winemakers in the past, and no, I love it. I mean, it's got that sort of classic bright blackberry, but also a little bit of that fermentannin that McLaren seems to have. Not that sort of more open knit, juby fruit kind of character that I tend to find in Barossa. And I quite like the chalkiness to it. I couldn't quite pick it up, but it was something. It's not really full bodied. It's actually got a little bit of elegance to it. I've always wondered about that being in McLaren, because it's just not quite the heat that you're getting further inland. But yeah.
Now, Richard, you make a good point, because probably down in Cape Town, Bruce Jack is a friend of mine, and he obviously made wines in McLaren Vale and then back around Cape Town. And there's some similarities between the Cape and McLaren Vale. Being close to the water, you get the cooling effect in the afternoon. So there is more elegance. And one of the things you might notice with the Luna is that little 3% of Barberia in the wine adds some perfume, and you get that little violet lift that you might have recognised, and it also just the elegance of McLaren Vale Shiraz is largely due to the fact that we do have the cooling winds at night time and the proximity to the water. It does make it cooler than the Barossa Valley.
Yeah.
Guys, can I throw in a question, or I'm going to pick up on a question that was put in here by, this was sent about 20 minutes ago or so from Paul and Alex. And they said, sometimes we find a red wine is smoother a day or so later, but are you meant to drink it that way? You wouldn't in a restaurant. So I think it makes sense. The waiter, the sommelier, whomever comes over and they pour it straight in, you drink it straight away. you wouldn't in a restaurant. We had a Stephen Millier Zinfandel, so Stephen Millier from Lodi in California. We had a Stephen Millier Zinfandel and didn't like it on the day, but loved it 2 days later. Is that okay? Working backwards up the question, yes, it's absolutely okay. You know, coming back to should I put this in my mouth or not? If it smells okay, you know, it's generally okay. It's absolutely fine. It's in no way detrimental to you if you've left the wine I'm currently tasting a wine 7 day open for 7 days with no vacuum or anything. It's a wine from Bordeaux, and I'm just looking at it over 7 days, and it's just perfect. And it because of its structure. So yes, you can keep a wine 1, 2, 3 days open. And why does it look smoother the next day? And I think Jock was touching on it basically is the wine has been closed up, positively so, under a cork or a screw cap for, let's say this is 2020. Jock, is this Luna Hill 2020? Yes, 2020. So this wine, for example, has been bottled, let's say you bottled, it's about 1.5 years or 2 years in bottle, and it's been living there happily integrating it with itself. But once you open it up, it's sort of a bit nervous to the outside world, and you taste it, and you know it hasn't really come out of its shell. And sometimes eventually oxygen will kill the wine. You know, like vinegar, vin aigre. Vin is wine, and aigre is bitter, and vinegar will sort of send the wine over. But typically in this window, the oxygen will soften it, and it'll take off those harsh edges. The most relevant wine here is wine number 4, Jimenez Landi from Spain, Mentrida. That wine is really quite structured and even a bit challenging at the moment. But tomorrow, whether it's this sachet or a bottle, 1 day later, it's going to look completely different. So yeah, you can let the wine open up. Yeah, do you want anything to add to that, John?
Yeah, exactly. And I know Richard, with his experience, would probably cringe at the concept, but you've seen me do it before, where you'll pour 1 glass out of a bottle, put the screw cap back on, and then vigorously shake it for 20 seconds. Air will get through the wine, take the cap off, and then even when you pour a glass, it will have a little bit of froth in it. Within 10 seconds, that will settle out. And then if you look at the two side by side, one might be a little bit reductive and the other one will open up, and it's the one that's opened up that you want to drink, which is why even if you don't have a decanter, sometimes the wines we obviously make are well filtered, so it can really open up a wine. And people often in the comments that we get from Angel saying, I didn't like the wine as much last night, but today I loved it. And that's simply because the wine has opened up, and that's why we encourage people to decant the wines. It makes a big difference.
Richard, before you jump in, can I just share with everyone who's watching? Jock, I think the last time we spoke, you introduced the concept of using a NutriBullet. And I swore I'd do it. I haven't done it. Now I will do it. I promise I will do it. So basically pouring the wine into a jug and then like whizzing the hell out of it. Is that what you would actually do on one of your wines?
Well, you know, we wouldn't necessarily encourage a NutriBullet, but on every occasion, but it's well worth doing a trial just to show people that getting some air into a wine really does open it up. And like you say, wines are often better the next day because they're not as tight, they're more open, the fruit is softer, the acids seem to have diminished a little bit, and they're more pleasant across the palate. Very good.
Well, good guy. I think why don't we just take a moment here, Lorita, if you don't mind sharing, we just get a quick view from the room, if you don't mind, guys, if you're still with us, Copus Mentis or not. Yeah, which wines have you enjoyed this evening? And guys, you know, take it on the chin. Your wines are absolutely fantastic, which is why I've asked you to personally to join. So I adore your wines and I recognize the quality, and then it's just about a variation. Share with us your thoughts in terms of which wine you preferred. There's 400 of you on the call, so straw poll it is somewhat. And in the meantime, I'm just going to quickly pick up another question. There's a question about the Angel discount from Claire. Excuse me, Claire. The Angel's discount varies from £15 to £0. What determines that range? So the Angel discount versus the market price. Basically, Claire, some wines we buy in a sense opportunistically. It's very rare, but we just buy it and go, this is a fantastic wine. I think our customers will like it. And it tastes like we're going to sell it for. The majority of the time, we're funding wines or we're buying wines which we know through our relationship with the winemakers or the model which we're buying through our winemakers. We buy it for the quality that it is. And in other markets, it's selling for a higher price. And we are able, because of your £20 as angels, to return it to you at the angel price when actually it tastes like a higher price. So that is where it ranges. So why is there any £0 wines? It's because occasionally we come across ones where we go, look, let's just get it to the guys. They'll love it, but it tastes like $16.99 and not above. That is the difference between the angel price and the market price. So we should see pop up on the screen any minute now, but I think everyone's already joining us. Oh, last minute scrapes in there. Jock, I think it is a decadent and indulgent red wine, your Luna Shiraz. So we're grateful to have it, and it's fantastic and it's widely appreciated. I've already stated my favorite white wine of the site is probably Richard's Chardonnay, but that's subjective. It's personal, and it's appreciated by, I can't remember the percentage, but a good healthy number of people. But brilliant. I mean, those of you in attendance, share your finishing comments in the chat room. If there's other types of sessions you'd like us to do, other wines you'd like us to show. But just to summarize, this was about drinking first class. This is about tasting wines that you might not usually buy, but we know I'm very privileged to taste these wines, and I go, we have got to put all of these together to just show what a cracking lineup we have, and the breadth, the diversity, tasting wines from the Gredos, the mountains outside of Madrid, to this to Beaujolais, which is, you know, just below Burgundy, down to McLaren Vale, to Elgen, all around the world. It's anyway, I've enjoyed it because I just feel spoiled tasting these wines, and I'm glad you joined us. Thank you, and until next time. Closing words from Richard Kershaw before I hand to Jock. Richard.
Oh, just really to say thank you very much. It's been great to join everybody, and some really good questions that were asked. Even if we didn't get through all of them, I could have spent all night doing it, but eventually everybody would have fallen asleep. So no, it's been really great to be here.
Good on you. And Jock, we're very grateful that you got up so early. That's a real mission. I'm sure you'll be out in the vines in no time, but yeah, anything you want to say to the guys before we clock out?
Well, I just firstly like to thank all of the angels with the Tree Hugger project that we've done down in Australia, planted over 10,000 trees with the support of Naked Wines. And I know that, you know, heard comments about climate change and the environment. So thank you everyone for supporting that. To Richard, thank you, mate. Really interesting listening to your commentary. Good luck when you try and belt Ireland in Paris in a couple of weeks. I'm sure you and Ray will have a little wager on it. And to all of the angels that joined this evening, thank you for your ongoing support. I can say that angels are supplying the best wines they ever had now or ever have. So Ray, again, thanks to you for finding gems across the world, and look forward to coming over and seeing everyone soon. So thanks very much.
Good on you. Good on you guys. Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks a million for joining. We've got another one coming up soon, so just keep an eye on that tab on the website. I can't remember exactly when it is. It's September, pretty sure it is. Thank you for joining. I love the wines. I love all these wines. They're fantastic. Good night, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good night.